Hello there, and welcome back to Warthon. Yet again, I'm in the Leclerc S2 for your pleasure, this time for a whole video. The first time I featured this tank a few days back was when I wanted to show off the 4K video rendering quality of this awesome PC of mine. Linked to the benchmark video, so to speak, where you could see the PC build, etc. in the video description down below. And also from that video, the very first sniping shot was taken, because I think such a shot never gets old, right? So Leclerc S2, fire and maneuver, the essential high tier tank qualities. And I think there is not really any other MBT that fulfills this from start to finish as good as this tank. Sure, there are tanks that have a higher rate of fire, but not that many. Sure, there are tanks that are faster, but not that many. Sure, there are tanks that have better shells, but also not that many. However, the full package, I think, is really great with the Leclerc, which also is a goddamn good looking tank, if I may say so. So what is this tank all about? What can you expect from it? Well, this tank has overall fantastic handling statistics. It begins with the gun, a 120mm geared CN120 26F1 cannon. Overall ammunition capacity is 40 rounds per minute. We have then also one heavy machine gun or coaxially, and then we have also an autoloader giving this tank a 6-second reload, independent from your crew skill and your crew status. Then we have 8 degrees of gun depression, 20 degrees of gun elevation. While not really excellent, it is by no means bad. We have 30 degrees per second turret traverse. Yes, there are better tanks with 40 degrees, but never mind. But what really matters, in my opinion, is the 36 degrees per second gun elevation speed. And then we have also the mobility. For a 56.2 ton tank, we have a 1475 horsepower strong gas turbine diesel hybrid engine with a very interesting handling and sound characteristics that gives it a 26.2 ton horsepower per ton ratio. So that's outright fantastic. But then there is also the top speed of 71 kilometers per hour and a reverse of 38 kilometers per hour. Outright fantastic. You have neutral steering, and there is one caveat that a lot of the Western MBTs share, and that is that it feels a bit awkward in close quarters, where then all the power goes into the ground. It feels at some point the tank builds up so much resistance, then it outright is worse than some of the Soviet tanks that seem to slide all over the place, which is a bit weird because, you know, it feels strange. That's all that I'm going to say about this. Anyway, so mobility is fantastic, handling's fantastic, and then the firepower is also fantastic. The armor, on the other hand, is less than debatable. Lower glacis is big, huge weak spot, a gigantic gun breach area, and the armor itself is also not the thickest, although sometimes trolley. The survivability is also quite not that great because, well, you can remove the ammo rack from the hull of the tank, and then you have only the ammo rack in the back of the turret, which I think is a blowout panel. But you only have 3 crew members, and you know how quickly Soviet tanks die to crew loss, yes? But again, you have the autoloader to make up for it if you lose 1 crew member. So that is then again an advantage. You know, it's not clear cut, it's not black and white. It's a few shades of gray, to be honest, which kind of reflects in a beautiful way the camouflage. So what about the ammunition? And this is where it's very similar to the predecessor. You start with the OCC 120 G1 Heat FS with only 480mm of penetration. I say only because this is the standard NATO heat round, in this case with 1100 meters per second, and you know, it doesn't do all that well versus era protection, versus composite armor, versus bushes, trees and fences you can't shoot through, and that is also a downside when fighting in the woods or in, you know, in the streets at the start of the game in particular, where the shell prematurely detonates. But when you pen, it has a decent amount of pulse penetration damage effect. As a tier 1 upgrade, you already get the OFL 120 G1 with 394 millimeters of penetration and a massive 1650 meters per second muzzle velocity. And then you obviously have, as a tier 4 upgrade, the OFL 120 F1 with 575 millimeters of penetration and nearly 1800 meters per second muzzle velocity. That's just fantastic. But it gets better, because you have crystal clear thermal imaging for both the gunner and the commander. At this point, the only thing missing, it feels like, is the ability to scout, but you know, that aside, the tank therefore overall convinces. Fire and maneuver, switching position, just letting your enemies guess where you are, kill them quickly, and sometimes you survive due to the auto-loader more than you would with a normal true loading mechanism. So that is the Leclerc. I actually had fun playing this tank and I thoroughly enjoyed it. However, I have to say that I felt a bit rusty, and probably I have a bit too much performance from my PC. I still have to get used to from the old setup, hence why I make some strange shots, some weird decisions, because I want to really perform in this tank. It has the capabilities, and it also has the charm, so I absolutely love it. For shots like this, I can't get enough. However, and this is now the second half of the video, and I don't want this to be misunderstood as a rant, there are some things that in general ruin the fun for me at top tier. Getting the same map 3 or even 4 times in a row, even in the same game mode, that's just awful. The next thing is that helicopters. Helicopters are a big issue. Another thing is that very often the sound design doesn't really work properly when then you hear a tank that appears out of nowhere behind you, whereas you are obviously crystal clear to hear apparently for the enemy. It shouldn't be the drivers, it should be a bit more the game side, right? And obviously at top tier you rarely get maps like Mostock, where you have the terrain to work with, where you can just disappear and then reappear from a completely different position, and you can distract the enemies and just hold their advance, which is something I personally would love to do. Maybe I should get a bit more into sim, you know, if bigger maps are a thing there. However, I think that the Leclerc by itself is a good tank. I just think that I missed the chance to show its full potential. Yes, sometimes better shots could be made, but I think that I still do decently. Now, is this tank a real upgrade over its predecessor? Is this a tank that is worth the huge amount of, I guess, 400,000 RP over the first Leclerc? To be honest, not all that much, to be honest. It's more or less an identical tank. While this provides you with an extra tank for your top tier lineup, I think that to go through the grind again, to go through the stock grind again, etc., that's a bit, I'd say, not everybody's cup of tea, to be honest. However, it is down to you. Obviously, if you main the French tech tree, if you don't have all that many other top tier tanks, because, you know, the grind, then yeah, sure, go for it and have a competitive lineup, in my opinion. With the Roland, you have a good SAM system. With the 2 Leclercs, you have 2 decent main battle tanks. The MX-40, believe it or not, is still a good backup. And the only thing that you kind of miss is a high tier light tank. So yeah, the MX-13 Hot just simply doesn't cut it. Aside from this, it's just a very simple lineup, and that's before we go into the air part, which I won't cover in this video. What I discovered was that this tank is, even for top tier standards, sometimes surprisingly quick in position. I wouldn't go as far as to say that it is like a top tier Hellcat, but at least you can switch position faster, and even in the stock grind you can go from positions faster than other stock grind tanks. So I'm not quite sure if this is an advantage or not. Anyway, the Leclerc, it looks fantastic. It performs fantastically, and fighting on open huge maps at long range with the combination of the 6-second autoloader with this massive mass velocity of nearly 1800 meters per second, I think it's 1790 to be precise, with that penetration, yeah, in any given, I think, statistic, this tank is not outstanding, but it's the whole package that is really convincing and lets you endure most situations. And I think I've discussed it here in not a tank review, but more a rundown of the statistics, first impressions style video. Yeah, a top tier thermal imaging is essential. This tank has crystal clear also for the commander, which is, as I said, a huge advantage and a big relief. So in short, the Leclerc S2 is the perfect top tier tank, the essential top tier tank. Not best in every single category, but in my opinion, the best package that you can get. And that's it for me today. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Please give this video a like with it, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see each other on the waves, in the skies, and on the battlefields of War Thunder.